But I'll give you another example. Chris Cuomo. In what respect is Chris Cuomo a journalist? In any respect at all? Why was he hired? Because of his outstanding journalism? No, because of his name. Has he done anything that's particularly profound or even professional? No. So he's going to describe for you and me last night on CNN the difference between these white supremacists, all 20 of them, and Antifa, and how the violence is different depending on your ideology. Cut 8, go.
Peppered in the crowd were members of ANTIFA, or anti-fascists. They covered their faces, confronted police, and berated journalists. And that was...
No, they did more than berate journalists. They actually attacked the cops and attacked a journalist at NBC. And in the past, they've hurt people, really hurt people, have assaulted people. But look at how he dishonestly defines them. Is he a journalist? Go ahead.
Now, you've been hearing it. There's a lot of whataboutism and spin going on, and it's kind of sickening to me. So
whataboutism is a way to dismiss context, experience, and history by people who think the world began today. That's not whataboutism. That's called rational thinking. Go ahead.
Common understandings. A protester uses their voice. Song, slang, slurs. There's a huge range, but it is talk. When you use your hands in a violent way, you are a rioter. And unless you're justified in defending yourself and you hit someone, you're a thug, you're a criminal. You attack cops, you slap the media, you're in the wrong. Period. But
okay, so who did that? Who did that? Why did you not connect what you just said to Antifa in this particular event? Why would you do that? Go ahead.
All punches are not equal morally. In the eyes of the law, yes.
Now, actually, in the eyes of the law, this guy's a lawyer. No. Self-defense, a punch is legal. Self-defense, a punch is legal. If you're trying to assault somebody to steal something from them, a punch is not legal. So he's a moron on multiple levels, but here he's pretending to be not only a journalist, but a philosopher. Go ahead.
The eyes of good and evil. Here's the argument. If you're a punk who comes to start trouble in a mask and hurt people, you're not about any virtuous cause. You're just somebody who's going to be held to the standard of doing something wrong. But when someone comes to call out bigots and it gets hot, even physical, are they equally wrong as the...
No, that's not what happened here, Cuomo. Antifa comes to a place to be violent. There's been undercover video of them training to be violent, to provoke a conflict. We've all seen it on TV. It's on the internet. He's now excusing Antifa by the way he is manipulating the facts, using his rhetoric, and spreading propaganda. You will never hear me make any excuses for the Klan or the neo-Nazis, many of whom, Mr. Producer will tell you, have threatened my life and have put stuff on websites that are absolutely disgusting. But I don't come here behind the microphone and whine about it every day. Now and then I alert you to it, but that's the way it is when you're a public figure. That said, you will never hear me defend them in any respect, nor will I defend Marxists who pretend to be civil rights activists, who go to events for the purpose of brutalizing other human beings. But you're now listening to Chris Cuomo doing exactly that. Exactly that. Go ahead.
For fighting, I argue no. Fighting against hate matters. Now, how you fight matters too. There's no question about that. But drawing a moral equivalency between those espousing hate and those fighting it because they both resort to violence...
But the Antifa is not fighting hate. Marxists aren't fighting hate. Marxists are responsible for all kinds of genocide, suffering, destitution, just because you have an affinity towards Marxism or leftism or progressivism doesn't excuse any of this, Mr. Cuomo. None of it. And the nomenclature you're trying to give this, the label you're trying to assign to this, is appalling. It's unconscionable. Go ahead.
Emboldens hate, legitimizes hateful belief, and elevates what should be stamped out.
That's Chris Cuomo. But he wasn't done. Cut 9, go.
He needed to call out the bigots and the white supremacists, and he didn't. Why?
So now it's on the president. Again. Charlottesville last year is on the president. Why? We all know what he was saying. We all know what he meant. Haters on both sides. Violence on both sides. Is that false? Is it false? No, it's not false. All kinds of nuts, pushing all kinds of causes. The radicals, the extremists among us. You see, here's the difference. Antifa is a communist movement. The Klan is a fascist movement. You and I are constitutional conservatives. We have nothing to do with them, and we want nothing to do with them. We make excuses for none of them. We don't draw moral comparisons. It's irrelevant. But Chris Cuomo identifies with Antifa. Oh, he'll use the word but, and there are exceptions and that sort of thing. He identifies with it. We identify with none of them. Because you and I are the moderating forces in this country. Because we embrace our Declaration and those principles. We embrace our Constitution and the limits on government. We embrace equal justice. Equal justice, not equal outcomes. We believe in God-given natural law, unalienable rights for all human beings. We don't identify with any of the kooks. But he does. Listen to him. Go ahead.
He therefore have unprecedented support from these fringe elements of white power. Two wrongs and what is right. The bigots are wrong to hit. Antifa or whomever, anarchist or malcontent or misguided, they are also wrong to hit. But fighting hate is right.
He always uses the word but. But. Fighting hate is always right. Fighting hate is always right. This is very interesting to me. So if people hate you, that's enough to physically attack them? No. You hear his incoherence? He really hasn't laid out guidelines. He really hasn't laid out guidelines of any type. Listen to his ambiguity. His ambiguity in defining Antifa and the left, that is violent. And what he doesn't play and what he doesn't tell you is at one of the events on Sunday, the president's life was threatened repeatedly by people marching with Antifa. There were 20, maybe 25, maybe 30 based on reports, I wasn't there, of these white supremacist slimeballs. But there were hundreds and hundreds of the Antifa who were threatening. Many of them were threatening the president's life. Is that okay, Chris Cuomo? You see, we're not going to listen to him anymore. I've played enough. You get the gist. When you listen to him making excuses for violence, trying to create a philosophy around it, and he fails miserably. There are reasons for violence, and we'll discuss that one day. But you shouldn't be loose with the terms and loose with the logic, which is illogic. When you hear him, when you hear this guy, this professor, Michael Eric Dyson, when you hear people like this, when you hear day in and day out that Trump is Hitler, Trump used Stalinist tactics, Trump is a threat to our Constitution, Trump is mentally ill. Trump is a racist. You're encouraging the lunatics out there to not just say things, that is, threaten the president, but you may be encouraging one of them to try and harm the president. And the media take no responsibility for what they're doing. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Very short segment, as we did a very robust segment beforehand. And I hope you've been listening to the last 90 minutes or so. Get a real sense, in my view, for actual reality. Not that you have to agree with my political opinions, but I'm trying to analyze what comes through the tube, what comes through the radio, what comes through your computer, what you've been reading, what you're looking at. And so much of it is phony. The president really has hit on something here, intentionally or otherwise. Fake news. This is why the media are so upset with him. Number one, he got elected. Number two, he's quite effective. And number three, he's exposed them. It is fake news. These are, in many respects, pseudo-events. They are distractions. They are an unreality. I'll be right back.